In a world obsessed with appearances, numbers, and status, there's one quiet killer of a man's peace, and it's comparison. Every day, you're shown someone richer, stronger, more successful, more admired. And without even realizing it, you start shrinking. Not because you're not enough, but because you've started measuring your worth by someone else's ruler. Men, here's the truth they don't teach you in school. Comparison is the thief of joy, the enemy of growth, and the shortcut to self-destruction. It's the fast track to insecurity, envy, and paralysis, and it's everywhere. Online, in the gym, at work, even among friends. But the strongest men in history, the ones who left legacies, they didn't waste time comparing themselves. They mastered self-awareness, not self-judgment. They focused on their path, their mission, their growth, and they understood this. Your journey is not supposed to look like anyone else's. Listen carefully. You will never become the man you were meant to be if you keep trying to become the man someone else already is. The moment you stop comparing and start cultivating your discipline, your character, your principles, that's the moment you begin to rise, not in status, but in strength, not in followers, but in freedom. This video is for the man who's tired of feeling behind, the man who's been silently battling feelings of inferiority, the man who's ready to finally reclaim his mental peace and live with clarity, purpose, and self-respect. We'll go deep into the dangers of comparison, the powerful stories of men who overcame it, and how you can build a mindset that's unshakable in a world designed to make you doubt yourself. So before we begin, like this video if you're ready to break free from toxic comparison. Share it with a brother who needs to hear this. Subscribe to the channel for more raw, real lessons on masculinity and mental strength. And comment below with this: I choose growth over comparison. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Illusion of Progress. Why comparison is a trap. There's a story about two men who trained side by side in a small village in ancient Sparta. Both were strong. Both were disciplined. Both were respected. But one constantly measured his progress by looking at the other, his strength, his speed, his praise. While the second man trained in silence, always pushing himself, not to be better than others, but to be better than who he was yesterday. Years later, when war came, the first man broke under pressure. The second led with quiet strength and unwavering presence. His reward, not applause, not riches, but peace. That's the real reward for those who stop comparing and start growing. The first life lesson is this: comparison makes you forget what you have and blinds you to who you're becoming. It's like running a race with your head turned sideways. You lose momentum, you trip, you stop seeing your lane. That's what most men are doing today, living their lives constantly distracted by the highlight reels of others. They see someone's car, physique, relationship, career, and assume they're failing. But here's a hard truth. Most of what you're comparing yourself to is fake. Instagram filters don't show the stress behind the smile. Success posts don't show the loneliness behind the lifestyle. A man's status doesn't always reflect his character. When you compare, you're not just being unfair to yourself, you're feeding a lie. Let's talk history. In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte was crowned Emperor of France. He was a military genius, a powerful leader. But what many don't know is that he was plagued by comparison. Obsessed with being greater than Alexander the Great, he kept pushing further until ambition turned to overreach. His failed Russian campaign cost hundreds of thousands of lives, and eventually his empire. Why? Because he let comparison drive him beyond wisdom. Power without peace is destruction. Now contrast that with Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor of Rome. He ruled during war, plague, and betrayal, but he wrote privately in his journal, not to impress, not to compare, but to reflect. He wrote, "Do not waste time on what other people do or say. It is your duty to be good." That's the posture of a strong man, focused inward, not outward. Measuring his life by virtue, not vanity. Comparison breeds these three poisons in a man. 1. Envy, you start resenting others for having what you want. 2. Insecurity, you start doubting your own path, even if it's working. 3. Distraction. You lose focus chasing someone else's version of success. Real men? They replace those poisons with 3 pillars. Self-respect, built by doing what's right, not what's trending. Purpose, built by following your values, not validation. Patience, built by trusting your timing, not social pressure. Let me tell you a story from real life. There was a man named Raymond, a carpenter from Detroit. He didn't have a big following, he never went viral. But for 35 years he woke up at 5 a.m., built homes with his bare hands, raised 2 sons with integrity, stayed faithful to his wife, and never once tried to be someone else. One of his sons became a judge, the other a teacher. At Raymond's funeral, hundreds showed up, not because he was famous, but because he was solid. That's legacy. So ask yourself right now, are you building a legacy or just building a profile? Are you focused on building strength in the dark, or are you addicted to being seen? Men fall because they forget that worth is not proven by applause. It's proven by quiet discipline. No man rises while chasing someone else's image. Here's what you do instead. Audit your inputs. Unfollow people who trigger envy. Follow people who build character. Track your growth. Instead of saying, "I'm not there yet," say, "I'm further than I was." Practice gratitude. Every morning, name 3 things you're building that no one sees but that matter. Get back in your lane, because the finish line is not theirs, it's yours. And your only competition is the man in the mirror. Don't let the noise of the world drown out the truth in your gut. You were never meant to be like everyone else. You were meant to become something only you can become. And that's a path no comparison can help you walk. Comment below. I am walking my own path at my own pace for my own purpose. Chapter 2. The Death of Identity. How Comparison Kills Who You Really Are. There's something tragic happening to men today, something few people talk about. They're losing their identity. Not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, but because they're constantly told they should be someone else. You see, comparison doesn't just make you feel bad, it makes you forget who you are. It doesn't just distract you, it dissolves you. When you spend your time watching other people rise, you start questioning your own value. You copy what's trending, mimic what's popular, and abandon what's true. And over time, the man you were born to be, the man with depth, grit, and soul, starts fading into the background, all because you've become addicted to someone else's path. Here's the truth. You cannot compare and be confident at the same time. Confidence comes from identity. Identity comes from self-knowledge. And self-knowledge only comes when you stop looking at others and start listening to yourself. In 1947, a young man named Malcolm Little entered prison. He was lost, no direction, surrounded by stronger, louder men. But instead of comparing himself or conforming, he began to study, to reflect, to build. When he came out, he wasn't just smarter, he was transformed. He became Malcolm X, a man who shook the world not by copying others, but by becoming fully himself. His voice, his fire, his mind, it all came from turning inward, not outward. You don't become powerful by being more like them. You become powerful by being more like you. Now let me tell you a modern story. A young man named Isaac grew up comparing himself to everyone, his friends, influencers, athletes. Every time he saw someone succeed, he shrank. Every gym selfie, every luxury post, every fake motivational quote made him feel like he wasn't enough. It wasn't until he took a full year off social media that he began to hear his own thoughts again. He started journaling, training quietly, building a business, reconnecting with who he was, without the noise. By the end of that year, he didn't just feel better, he was better. And the most surprising part, he didn't miss anything. The world had moved on, but for the first time he hadn't moved off course. That's what comparison steals from men, the stillness to know what you want. Not what gets claps, not what gets reposted, but what feeds your soul and builds your life. Here are 3 signs that comparison is killing your identity. 1. You start changing your goals based on other people's success. One week you want to be a writer, the next a bodybuilder, the next a crypto investor, just because you saw someone winning. 2. You can't enjoy your wins anymore. You get a raise, and suddenly it means nothing because someone else is making more. 3. You feel like nothing is ever enough. You're always chasing, but never arriving. Let me be clear, ambition is healthy. But comparison is not ambition, it's insecurity in disguise. The men who win long-term don't compete for attention, they compete for alignment. They don't ask, how do I measure up? They ask, am I moving in the direction that honors my values? Here's what you can do starting today. Write down your top 5 values. Is your current path aligned with them? Or are you chasing something because someone else told you it mattered? Create before you consume. Start your day by doing something for yourself before you look at what others are doing. Set private goals. Not everything needs to be posted. Not everyone needs to know. Keep some wins sacred. Remember this: what you build quietly will serve you loudly. You don't need validation for what you're building. The results will speak when it's time. Identity is like a muscle. It gets stronger the more you exercise it against resistance. And in today's world, the greatest resistance is staying true to yourself when everyone else is trying to be someone else. Let's end with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And that's exactly what strong men do. They don't compare, they don't copy, they commit to themselves, to their mission, and to the discipline of becoming unshakably real. Comment below. I'd rather be real and unknown than fake and applauded. Chapter 3. The mental cost of comparison. How it weakens your focus, energy, and power. Every man has a limited amount of mental fuel each day. Your energy, your willpower, your focus, it's not infinite. And what you focus on multiplies. So the question is, where is your focus going? If your focus is being eaten by constant comparison, scrolling, judging, overthinking, doubting, then you're not just wasting time. You're draining your power. The mind is like a battlefield, and every comparison is a bullet to your confidence, your clarity, and your mission. Let me tell you a real story. There was a young man named Deshawn. Grew up with ambition, fire, talent. But every time he made progress, he'd see someone else doing more, better job, better body, better life. Instead of celebrating his wins, he'd get stuck in his head. I'm behind. I should be further. Why can't I have what he has? Over time, he stopped taking risks. He lost motivation. Eventually, he dropped out of school, not because he lacked ability, but because comparison drained him of belief. This happens to millions of men. They don't burn out from hard work. They burn out from constantly questioning their own path. Comparison creates 3 dangerous traps in a man's mind. 1. Overthinking. You start analyzing everything through the lens of how you measure up. 2. Paralysis. You become afraid to act, fearing it won't be good enough. 3. Self-sabotage. You unconsciously destroy your own progress because deep down you don't feel worthy. Let's go back in time. During the late 1800s, Nikola Tesla arrived in the US, brilliant, eccentric, and visionary. He once worked for Thomas Edison, another genius. But the two couldn't be more different. Edison was practical, business-minded, and craved recognition. Tesla was idealistic, private, and obsessed with innovation for the sake of progress. Now Tesla could have spent his life comparing himself to Edison, trying to beat him at his own game. But instead, he went his own way. While Edison became rich and famous, Tesla focused on legacy, alternating current, wireless technology, innovation that was ahead of his time. And today, Tesla's name is remembered not just as a brand, but as a symbol of vision beyond validation. That's the lesson. When you stop comparing, you start inventing. Your best ideas, your most authentic power, your deepest peace don't come when you're watching others. They come when you're tuned in to yourself. Let's make this practical. When you find yourself comparing, pause and ask, is this inspiring me or distracting me? Am I comparing their results to my process? Do I even want what they have, or do I just want their applause? 9 times out of 10, the answer will reveal something powerful. You're chasing something that was never yours to chase. And here's the cost. Comparison robs you of focus, and focus is the most valuable currency a man has. In a world of chaos, a man who can focus is a weapon. He's dangerous, he's rare, and he gets things done. That's what separated men like Bruce Lee. He once said, "The successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus." Bruce Lee didn't try to be like every other martial artist. He stripped away what didn't work. He created his own style. And because he focused, he transcended, not just in skill, but in impact. Now ask yourself, how much energy have you wasted worrying about someone else's progress? How many hours have you spent scrolling instead of building? How many times have you delayed action because you feared it wouldn't look as perfect as theirs? That's death by 1,000 cuts. And you fix it by doing the opposite. Ruthless, focus on your lane. Here's how to reclaim your mental power. Limit consumption. Spend more time creating than consuming. Every hour you're watching someone else's life is an hour you're not building your own. Establish no comparison zones, mornings, workouts, planning time. Make those sacred. No social media, no gossip, just presence. Track your real metrics, not followers, not likes. Track your progress, discipline, strength, consistency. That's what builds a man. Celebrate silent wins. You read 10 pages, you worked out, you showed up. That's victory, not flashy, but solid. And solid is what lasts. Here's the deeper truth. Every time you compare, you're telling your mind, what I have isn't enough. And your mind believes you. It starts to shut down. But when you focus, you're telling your mind, we're building something real. And it rises to meet that standard. One more thing. You're not supposed to win fast. You're supposed to win right. And winning right means staying focused long enough to see the results that matter, not just the ones that look good on a screen. Comment below, I protect my focus like my life depends on it, because it does. Chapter 4. From Comparison to Mission. How Purpose Destroys Insecurity. At some point, a man must make a choice. Will I live distracted by others or driven by purpose? Because here's the truth. Comparison fades the moment you find your mission. When a man has a purpose that wakes him up in the morning, that pulls him out of weakness and into strength, he stops caring about what everyone else is doing. He's not impressed by status. He's not moved by popularity. He becomes mission-minded, and a man on a mission is impossible to manipulate. In 1519, Hernán Cortés landed on the shores of Mexico with a few hundred men, about to face thousands of Aztec warriors. His men were afraid. The enemy was bigger, richer, more powerful, but Cortés knew something most leaders didn't. Comparison creates hesitation, and hesitation kills action. So he did something radical. He burned the ships. No going back, no comparing, just forward, just mission. Now, whether you agree with his conquest or not, the lesson stands. When a man eliminates the option of comparison and commits fully to his path, he becomes unstoppable. Here's what comparison does to a man with potential. It splits his energy. It clouds his mind. It erodes his soul. But purpose? Purpose sharpens him, strengthens him, grounds him. Let's talk about David Goggins, a man who was overweight, depressed, working night shifts, stuck in life. Then he chose pain over comfort, discipline over distraction, purpose over pity. He didn't just run ultramarathons, he ran into the man he was supposed to be. You think Goggins had time to compare himself to Instagram influencers while doing 4,000 pull-ups? Number. He was too busy building calluses on his hands and on his mind. That's the mindset. You don't need to be better than them. You need to be more committed to your own standard. Comparison thrives in the absence of clarity. When a man doesn't know what he stands for, he becomes obsessed with how he stacks up. But when he's locked into a mission, his own values, vision, and virtues, He becomes immune to distraction. Here's how to move from comparison to mission. 1. Define your North Star. What do you stand for? What are you building? What matters most to you beyond money or approval? If you can't answer that, you'll drift into comparison every time someone else shines. 2. Build in private. Stop announcing everything. Grow in the dark. Let your results speak. The oak tree doesn't ask for applause while growing, it just grows. 3. Do hard things. Comparison thrives in comfort. But when you challenge yourself, when you train, when you build, when you suffer for a worthy cause, you don't have the energy to compare. You're too busy becoming. 4. Serve others. Comparison is selfish. Mission is selfless. When you serve your family, your community, your purpose, you stop thinking about who has more. You start focusing on what you're here to give. There was a man named Jorge, raised in a rough part of Chile. His friends were chasing drugs, cars, and women, always competing. But Jorge was different. He set his sights on becoming a paramedic. He studied in silence, worked night shifts, endured mockery for his low pay and long hours. But years later, when tragedy struck his town, a massive earthquake, it was Jorge who led the first response team. He pulled children from rubble, saved lives, organized aid. And in that moment, no one cared how much money he had or how many followers he had. They followed him because he had purpose. Comparison might win attention, but purpose earns respect. And purpose lasts. If you're struggling with comparison, it's not because you're weak. It's because you haven't found something worth your total focus yet. That's your real work, not to scroll more, but to dig deeper. Not to look around, but to look within. You were not born to imitate. You were not created to copy. You were designed to lead yourself. The most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest, the richest, or the most followed. It's the one who knows exactly what he's doing and why he's doing it. So I'll leave you with this. Comparison says, I wish I had their life. Mission says, I'm building a life no one else can. Choose mission. Comment below. I don't compare. I commit to purpose, to growth, to my mission.